Good afternoon and welcome to June episode of the Ohio Workforce Coalition's webinar series. We are going to be spending time talking to our friends and colleagues and partners at the Office of Workforce Development at ODJFS today. So again, thanks for joining. We are recording this session, and I've got just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So we are continuing this webinar series. We heard from the Office of Workforce Transformation a couple months ago, and are pleased to have Julie and Jay here with us today. But also encourage you to check out the Coalition's website for webinars and resources from months past. The Coalition is celebrating 15 years this year, which is amazing. And we are setting a goal of raising $15,000 for our policy and advocacy efforts. You can click the link in the chat, and please, any contribution you can make would be most appreciated. I mentioned 15 years, so it's actually since 2007 that the Ohio Workforce Coalition has been bringing together leaders from across the workforce ecosystem in Ohio. That includes anything from business and industry, labor, human services, community organizations, the public workforce system, all to really think about what it takes to grow prosperity across Ohio through policy advancement, practice improvements, and supports for workers, the quality of jobs, and equity of systems. Today's session is in a Zoom webinar format. We will have time at the end for questions, but please feel free to use the chat function as we go. Julie and Jay have opted to have more of an informal discussion with us today. And so there, I think, will be ample time to dig into some of what they have to share and really to talk about workforce across the state, their priorities, and so on. Coalition webinars are on the fourth Thursday of every month at 1 p.m. As I mentioned, they are recorded and available on our website. And you can also follow the Coalition on Twitter so that you know right away when it's posted, and can find other news and resources there. So with that, I want to turn it over to Julie Wirt and Jay Mendoza. So Julie and Jay are with the Office of Workforce Development at ODJFS. And many of you probably know that there has been a lot of change structurally at ODJFS within the Office of Workforce Development. And while neither of them are new to the work that they're doing, I think this is their first time coming to talk to us as a coalition. So really appreciate their willingness to be here, and have enjoyed getting to know at least Jay a bit better over the course of the last probably 18 months as we have continued to look at the workforce world. I hate to say post-COVID because it's still very real, but post-COVID, and as there's all sorts of new topics emerging in the field, like the Great Resignation and reckoning and all that fun stuff. So looking forward to the conversation. You can also, of course, check out their LinkedIn profiles, and they've been very open to being willing to answer questions and whatnot. So I'm sure if you've got questions that come up along the way that they can't answer directly here, we'll be sure to follow up. So with that, I want to hand it over to, well, am I handing it to Jay or Julie?
You're handing it to me.
Okay.
To Jay. So like Rebecca said, my name is Julie Wirt, and I am the Assistant Deputy Director in the Office of Workforce Development. And as she also said, is that I've been in this position just, I think I just had my year anniversary just probably a couple days ago with a lot of the changes that have occurred in our office, and really a change in leadership. I was able to have the opportunity to move up and fill the role of Assistant Deputy Director. What I'm going to be presenting to you is more on talking about some of the national things that are occurring with WIOA and the reauthorization. I'll talk a little bit about our Wagner-Pizer Employment Service Program, which is WIOA Title III programming. And then Jay's going to get into some more of our more office specific initiatives and activities that have been going on. So as many of you probably already know, is that WIOA reauthorization is up. Our laws are authorized for only so many years, and then they get reauthorized. And WIOA's reauthorization has been in the Congress's eyes for some time, and I would like to share with you some of the highlights of this reauthorization bill. I believe the term of it is, they're calling it as WIOA, so Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act of 2022. So some of the highlights, this reauthorization really is taking a look at what the purpose and what the intent of WIOA was for every, and basically fine tuning that, see where they hit and miss the mark a little bit, see if they can make some tweaks. But overall, it really is about bringing workforce up into this updated into the future, looking at priorities that are important to not just the legislators, but also very important to the job seekers. So the highlights are, as I'm going to start, is with the state and local workforce boards. They're looking at increasing the participation of labor organizations to 30% of the board. So right now it's 20%. Labor organizations are those are like apprenticeships, labor unions, and other entities that really represent that employer business relationship. And so they're looking at increasing those organizations to 30% of the board, which of course, by doing that also means that you're increasing the business side. So we're increasing the business services or the businesses on workforce boards, as well as the labor organizations. The other big, and this is what I find is to be exciting, is that this reauthorization bill is really looking at how to use evidence-based practices and how to integrate. We've been hearing about evidence-based practices, evidence-based this, that, for quite a while now, but it has never really been in the workforce arena. It's been mostly in the human services side of our federal programs, and now we're really looking at it as in workforce. And how do we really provide services that lead to the best outcomes for everyone involved? And so this bill is really pushing that thought, and that pushing that thought. And so the bill actually does have some definitions of what is evidence-based delivery model. So it defines the tiers of evidence. You'll see it in the adult program, where they really are looking at the state providing the tools that local areas need to provide that evidence-based service delivery. And so it's really about improving and driving service delivery to meet important outcomes for the job seekers and for the businesses as well. And so I really, that is something that's very important to me professionally. And so I'm very excited about that portion. The reauthorization also talks about changes to how Ohio Means Job Centers, in the law, they call them one-stops, but in Ohio, we call them Ohio Means Job Centers, how they're funded. There's right now, it is those centers are funded through a partnership with all in a collaboration with all the partners in that, and each partner needs to pay their fair share. They're really looking at moving away from that model, still ensuring that there's funding to support Ohio Means Job Centers, but looking at maybe a more effective manner. We know that all our providers, our partners, all receive different funding levels. And so sometimes partners can't afford. We want them to be in the centers, but they just can't afford this infrastructure funding. And so we're really looking at ways to make this all much more equitable so that everybody can participate as they need to be participating, but ensuring that at the same time that these centers continue to be funded appropriately. One of the big changes in the reauthorization is probably the biggest change is the structure of the youth program. And, under WIOA, they changed the program to be in school and out of school driven. They have now reclassified those and is now making it more of opportunity youth, which is by definition similar to what our out-of-school youth are. And then they also have another classification of at-risk youth, which is defined in federal code already. And it's really about high school students or secondary school students who have a series of barriers to that may cause them not to be able to complete high school. And so it's everything from being behind their grade level to being a parenting youth. So all those different types of barriers that we see in these at-risk populations, that they are now including those two, that as opposed to saying in school. And one of the nice things about that, which is very helpful, is that the reauthorization is saying that 75% of our funding will go towards both that opportunity youth as well as that at-risk youth. And that the remaining 25% will be for youth who just need the service, who may benefit from the services, but may not be in those two categories. So they're really changing around. They listen to the states and understanding that the move to the out-of-school, that population of youth, those that are disconnected from education and training and employment are very, very important. And that's still there. But in the meantime, we left behind some very much at-risk youth that were in high school. And it really made local areas have to shift those priorities away from those that category. And it's really bringing that back. And so that is a real good thing. The other emphasis is around summer and year-round employment. So our work experiences, really emphasizing the need for those work experiences and how valuable work experience is for our youth, and preparing them for long-term employment or further education, helping them identify career pathways. Work experience is invaluable, and it's just putting that refocus in the program. The other interesting piece to the youth program is requiring the local areas to conduct an assessment of their youth's needs. So it's going to be it didn't say how many, how often to do this, but that the assessments need to be done so that they can really take a look at the needs of the youth in their communities, and so that they can then tailor their program to meet those needs. So often we will initially can look at that, and then you don't relook at it. So you establish programming and services around, what was needed in the community at the time, but we don't necessarily go back and look at it again. And this is requiring you to look at it again. Under the adult and dislocated worker programs, This is again where some changes. This is again where it's getting back into the thing that I love, is the evidence-based workforce strategies, and it's really about the state helping the local areas develop the capacity to use those evidence-based strategies, and that's something that's pretty I think is pretty great. It will allow us to be innovative in our practices, look at ways in which we can meet the needs of individual communities, and that we can identify best practices and what strategies work best. The other big change, and I won't say big change because they really did a good job in WIOA of identifying barriers to employment, but this reauthorization goes a little bit further and just re-emphasizes what it means to work with individuals who have barriers to services. So it talks about the expanding use of supportive services, having to use so much money for supportive services to help these individuals. It expanded the definition of those barriers to employment to include other populations. And so it's, and of course it still has the adult funding, the priority to serve those individuals. So it's really looking at the programs, reevaluating and looking at meeting people where they are and ensuring they get the services as well as the supports needed to become gainfully employed. The other thing with training services is that incumbent worker training, which is increasing the amount of the local funds that can be used for incumbent worker training, and then also the amount of money available to use for transitional jobs. And so if you haven't heard really what a transitional jobs is it really goes back to those buried and individuals who have hard time establishing good work record. So transitional jobs is a program in which it's similar to work experience, but the real idea behind those is helping individuals who have poor work histories to get some type of work history that is stable for a period of time so that they can, you know, bolster their resume and become gainfully employed. So the last one thing I want to talk about with reauthorization is right now we receive reentry employment opportunities. So this is basically those individuals who are currently incarcerated, and when they come back into our communities, we know that one of the most important things for those individuals is to get them gainfully employed. And so right now, that services and programs for that to that end are through our discretionary grants. And so what they are now looking at is putting it its own program of reentry employment opportunities and provide states with allocations to, excuse me, in order to serve that population. So it'll be more consistent funding and the same amount all the time, so that we can then continue to provide those services. So the next question is, where is reauthorization at this point? So reauthorization did pass the House of Representatives on May 17th, and it's now with the Senate, and it has been referred to the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So as great as a lot of these things are in the reauthorization bill, I cannot say, you know, because the Senate will get their hands on it, and hopefully the pieces that are most meaningful to us will continue and to stick. But, you know, of course, there will be a Senate version most likely coming out. So that is WIOA reauthorization. I didn't know if anybody had any questions regarding that before I move on to Wagner-Peiser.
So I think, let me look at the chat. I can start with one question, Julie, relative to WIOA reauthorization, and that is just broadly, you mentioned reentry populations, you mentioned focus on barrier removal, but I haven't heard explicit strategies to address race and racism across the field, and whether that's occupational clustering or wage disparities or just access to services or jobs. And I'm curious, does it show up there? What are you hearing?
So in that realm, so the actual barrier that they have added is in regards to race and gender and that type of scenarios. And so they are looking at equity, and inclusion into our programs and ensuring that that is occurring. As far as some of the things with jobs, is that the Department of Labor has taken and is taking a very strong look at what is considered good jobs and really establishing and working with businesses. And Ohio is doing the same with their guidance as far as identifying what is important to, employees and what is offered through employers, and that does include some of the equity and the diversity, equity and inclusion type of activities. So that whole thought is spread across a lot of different initiatives that the Department of Labor, including this reauthorization, has done.
Okay. Then we had one question in the chat about participation goals. Are there participation goals to ensure private service providers that have an MBE or WBE certification have access to help design and implement the work? And I'm not sure, Elena, well, let me hand that to you. Maybe that's just an easy answer.
I think that the way that providers are selected, looking at some of the self-evaluations that I think our state as well as our local areas will be doing through this reauthorization will really reflect on what is the importance of the providers that we select, and whether that's either through a procurement or a grant, however it shall come, is we're really needing to look at how do providers meet the populations we want to serve. And so therefore, I think, through that process, I believe that, we will be looking at how to diversify.
Okay. And then is it fair to say, just as a follow-up to that, that once WIOA is reauthorized nationally, there's an entire process of new state plans that go out for public comment and policy development so it will all be out there. And anyone at that point can weigh in and offer comments throughout that process.
Just like when we did WIOA, there will be, with this, we'll have to do the whole show about what is the changes, how we're going to make those changes, engagement of all our partners in making those changes, and just really reflecting as a workforce community about what does this reauthorization mean and how do we go about it together.
Great. So a couple more questions, actually. So you referenced a focus on adult population. Was that specific to individuals on benefits and helping with the barriers to get them employed? So
yes, it does, because those who are on any type of public assistance, whether it be SNAP, cash, Medicaid, they're all part of our low income population, in which we do provide priority of service. And we do provide supportive services and all that to help them to become gainfully employed. Jay will be talking a little bit more about some current initiatives that we have in that realm.
All right. So I guess let's move to Wagner-Peiser.
All righty. So Wagner-Peiser is, during the pandemic, we took a real hard look at some of our programming, especially when the Ohio Means Job Centers, many of those which were closed or closed to the public for such a period of time that we've really reflected on our Wagner-Pizer program. So one of the benefits of Wagner-Pizer, for those of you who aren't familiar, is that Wagner-Pizer Employment Services is a workforce program in which we are able, that is delivered by the state. So it's state merit staff, and OWD is this, the agency who is the office who employs the staff. And so one of the things that we were able to really do is start taking a look at ourselves. Wagner-Pizer serves the universal customer with an emphasis on the unemployment insurance claimants. And so we know that in many ways, Wagner-Pizer is the door into our workforce system, because, you know, there's really no eligibility requirements. We can speak and talk to many of our customers without having to worry about eligibility. We can provide those the basic career services, and then allow other programs then to basically focus in on their specifics of their programs, whether it be WIOA, Aspire, whatever it shall be. Vocational rehabilitation. So we put together a little initiative in which we're calling Wagner-Pizer Redefine. And it's being headed by Jeanette Vest, who is the Bureau Chief over the employment and business and job seeker services. And so she has basically gotten her staff together and really looking at ways in which we can really serve our populations. How do we drive people into our Ohio Means Job Centers? So on the business service side, one of the things that we are currently doing is that we are holding virtual job fairs. We had just our very first one was, I believe it was yesterday. And I don't have all the stats of the success of that job fair, but we had 82 employers registered, and we had 312 job seekers registered. And so we expected a really good turnout. The topic for this job fair was the skilled trades. So we are analyzing the results of that job fair. We were very excited about it, and we'll be moving forward with some other key industries and holding job fairs and doing this on a periodic basis. So that's what our business service side is doing. On the job seeker side there's two things that are going on. One is we are looking at our outreach efforts. So we know that there's a lot of people who are, that are looking for employment, whether they're currently employed, maybe they're underemployed, or they're not employed at all. So we know that there's individuals looking for jobs. And we know that we've been fairly successful reaching out just to that universal customer, but we know there's certain populations that don't typically come into our centers. And so we are making a conscientious outreach to those populations. So this month, we are looking at outreach to military spouses. So military spouses, as we know, are, basically veterans, their spouses who may have a employment history that is kind of fragmented, in the sense that, as their military, their spouse who's in the military gets different assignments. So they continuously get reassigned every few years. So they go and they work for a short period of time, and then they move on to the next place. So we are doing, we're going to be outreaching to those individuals, as well as other veterans who are not currently in our Jobs for Veterans state grant program. We're outreaching to them, and just letting them know we are here to provide services. This is what we can do. And hopefully what we're trying to do is bring that population into our high means job centers, and then opening them, being the gateway to the workforce system in which we can offer, or, you know, refer them for training if they need to. You know, maybe they need other types of services that they may be qualified for, but just really being able to bring them into the centers, and then be able to work with them for employment opportunities. The other, so that's one. Then we're looking at other populations that we will go. We're looking at, of course, the re-entry or the restored citizen population we're looking at. We are looking at more collaboration with the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction to be able to work with them on, you know, the transition back to their home counties and communities. And so we can help them with employment opportunities. And so we're just looking at all those populations that, and targeting those populations and bringing them into the center. We have one specific program that we are looking at that are in regards to the UI claimants. So as I said, Wagner-Pizer, one of their main focus is on serving and helping UI claimants with their work search requirements and other types of activities that they must do in order to get their claims. So we are doing a special outreach effort to individuals who they filed for claims, but although they may not have, you know, gotten their first benefit. So we're looking at really letting them know that, you know, there's an Ohio Means Job Center. There's a program here that's ready to help you. You know, you've just been laid off and you need employment. We can help you get some employment, hopefully very quickly. And so it's really about letting those individuals know that there are people here to help. One of the things, you know, there's been a lot of customer service and different surveys that have been conducted during the, you know, the past 2 years during the pandemic. And one of the things that we have learned is that even though all our 88 counties have an Ohio Means Job Centers, that not everybody knows that those centers are here to help. So it's just really putting the spotlight on the Ohio Means Job Centers really as the hub to the workforce system, which, you know, can provide them a lot of services, provide referral services where needed, and really, you know, is hopefully putting people back to work fairly quickly. So that is, if anybody has any questions, those are the updates for with our Wagner-Pizer program.
So I got one question via direct message, and that is about working with immigrant and refugee communities from a recruitment perspective. There's some national policy work that's going on to better connect with them. Could you speak to that?
I can to a certain degree. So yes, we are part of that conversation regarding our immigrant and refugee population. We do know that right now there's, you know, like the Ukrainians, they are coming to Ohio. And so we are part of those conversations to help them with any reemployment service opportunities, as well as many other, you know, nonprofit organizations are also willing to help, and we're partnering with all of them, so we can get them some assistance.
And then what about people who are receiving other public benefits like TANF or SNAP and may have eligibility issues based on employment status? How do you recruit from those programs? How do you connect?
So there has been a partnership with our Office of Family Assistance, and who deliver the SNAP program and cash assistance program. And so we have been working together. There's a lot of internal collaborations going on within the counties that are helping. So while we do think that there's still more work to be done to assist those individuals who are receiving benefits to help them, get employment so they can come off of benefit. That's probably one of our easier collaborations because, they're in our office. Again, Jay will be talking a little bit more about that.
Okay. Well, just one more quick thing before we turn to Jay. I want to acknowledge you mentioned the local workforce areas, and we have Jennifer Meek-Eels on the call today, and she is the first, maybe new, but definitely first, executive director of the Ohio Workforce Association, which is the association of all of the board directors. And so as you're in your local areas, those boards are really a resource as far as just the rollout of any new policy. So Jennifer, do you want to say hi really quickly? Actually, I don't even know. Maybe we'll fit you in at the end. I'm not sure we have given you permission to talk yet. So let's go to Jay and then we'll get her in later.
Good. Yeah, we would love to hear from Jennifer. We talk to Jennifer all the time. We love Jennifer. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jay Mendoza. I'm the Bureau Chief of Workforce Administration. I do work for Julie Wirt, and I oversee many of our reemployment programs a little closer. So WIOA, Adult Dislocated Worker, RESEA, Apprentice Ohio, Policy Development, and Rapid Response kind of fall under my umbrella. As Julie mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of our initiatives we have going across the office, some updates to some of our grants, the WIOA Combined State Plan, and some of the waivers that came along with that. So I guess I'll start there because there's some pretty exciting things going on, I think, with some of the waivers that we asked for with our Combined State Plan. So for those of you that don't know, WIOA, we collaborate with some of our partner agencies, some of the other title agencies within WIOA, and put together a combined state plan every 4 years. The partner agencies, that we work with, of course, we've got Title I, WIOA Adult Dislocated Worker, Youth, Wagner Pizer, Aspire, Voc Rehab, Carl Perkins, and Technical Education, the Jobs for Veteran State Grant, Senior for Community Service Employment Program, and then, of course, the Office of Workforce Transformation. So we come together and we put together a 4-year plan, a combined state plan that really communicates the state's vision for the state workforce system for the next 4 years. We submit that 4-year plan back in March of 2020, right before the pandemic. So obviously a lot changed, in the past couple of years, and DOL does require us to submit a 2nd-year modification to that. So we did recently submit that back in March of this year, March 2022. We've received approval of our combined state plan modification. And some of the exciting things that go along with that is we can request waivers to WIOA law, or waivers, flexibilities, some things that are in federal law that we can modify requirements, remove requirements for a year or two, things like that. So it allows us to submit waivers with that department of with our combined state plan. We submit 4 waivers this year. All of them were approved, which is pretty exciting. 2 of which we've had for a while, so they're not new. So if you've been around our CCMEP program, these first 2 waivers are probably nothing new to you, but it's exciting to keep them going because they are making positive improvements to the program. The first one is to allow TANF funds to count toward the 75% expenditure requirement of an out-of-school youth, and to calculate that expenditure requirement on a statewide basis. So basically that just lumps in the TANF side of funds into our WIOA youth, and they look at that. They look at both pots of money to count towards that 75% expenditure rate. So we were approved with that going forward. We demonstrated the benefits of that, and DOL has said we could continue that moving forward for the next couple of years. The second waiver that we were approved for is one that we've had, is the ability to allow ITAs for in-school youth ages 18 to 21 years old. That's a waiver we've had for a while. It's allowed us to do more ITAs with that in-school youth population. So we're excited to keep that one going for FY 22 and 23. And then we have 2 new ones, which we're pretty excited about, that we were approved for. The first one is much like that first waiver that allows TANF funds to be calculated in that 75% expenditure rate. This one's around work experience. So this one allows TANF funds to count towards the 20% work experience expenditure requirement that we have in the youth program. So they can use both WIOA youth and TANF to, funded work experience and count towards that 20% requirement rate. The other one, which I think is extremely exciting and kind of excited to see some of the possibilities that some of our local areas can come up with, is to lower the minimum out-of-school youth expenditure requirement for WIOA statewide activities. So we were able to take that down for statewide funds from 75% to 50%. So basically what we're trying to do is promote special initiatives that local areas want to do, where they want to serve more in-school youth. I know we have a big problem out there with, I think the numbers I've seen out there, it's like one guidance counselor to 450 students out there, which is just crazy. So it allows our local boards, I think, some flexibility to come up with innovative projects with statewide funds to maybe go in and assist some of our school districts, to assist with that in-school population that is in desperate need right now. So I think there's going to be some exciting things to come out of that. Again, that's one that is new this year. It's for PY 22 and 23 going forward. So we're excited to hear from our local areas to see what they come up with, some initiatives to serve that in-school youth population. So that really covers our waivers. Some other updates around the office. We submit for a new grant around apprenticeship. That is the Apprenticeship Building America grant, or the ABA grant. And really what we're looking to do, we submit for about $4 million. We haven't heard back yet. We should hear something any day now on this. But really what we want to do is we want to expand the program. We want to modernize our staffing with that program. So, obviously apprenticeship it's big right now. It's a big buzzword. We get a lot of businesses that want to do it. They want to develop apprenticeships, but they really don't know how. And what we want to do is we want to kind of expand through the local workforce development areas. I know our local workforce areas get, overwhelmed with apprenticeship questions. They want to be able to serve businesses. They want to be able to add apprenticeship to that menu of business services that they already provide. So what we're really trying to do is hire some training officers, hire some additional apprenticeship service providers to train our local workforce boards on some of those components that they can assist those businesses with. That way, I think right now we have 7 apprenticeship service providers that serve all 88 counties in developing apprenticeships. That's just not enough. It doesn't meet the demand. So we would really like to lean and train on our 20 local workforce boards that serve all those 88 counties that already have those connections in the community, and we want to get them trained up on how they can serve those businesses, and kind of take some of those components that our apprenticeship service providers do and serve those businesses, and then kind of do as much as they can with them before there's certain things that Apprentice Ohio has to do. So we want to take some of that out of the hands of Apprentice Ohio service providers, give the local workforce areas the ability to serve those businesses, as kind of an extension of Apprentice Ohio. So that's really what we're trying to do with that, just trying to modernize our staffing internally, and then use the local workforce boards who are already out there serving businesses in their community as kind of an extension of that. So we're excited, to hear if we get that extra boost in funding for Apprentice Ohio. The next one is hiring our heroes. So the Office of Workforce Development, Veteran Services, they partnered with the Department of Veteran Services to target transitioning service members and military spouses. What they've been doing is they've been going to these Hiring Our Heroes Career Summit events around the country. They've been visiting, Fort Campbell, Fort Riley, Camp Lejeune, the Marine Corps base, and actually today they're down at Wright Pat Air Force Base. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to recruit, the military service members and bring them back to Ohio. We have big projects coming to Ohio, Intel being one of them. And that's not the only one. I know that's the big one we hear about, but there's projects and expansion going on all around the state. So we want to recruit, these transitioning service members to come back to Ohio, ones that maybe left the Ohio to go serve, and they're spending time and kind of trying to figure out where they want to land next. There's no better place than coming back to Ohio and to work in Ohio and to, contribute to the labor force going forward. So we're really hoping to see some data here soon, on the fruits of our labor, just getting out there and trying to recruit the transitioning service members and their spouses to come work in the great state of Ohio. And as Rebecca said, she threw an OH out there, so I'll throw an IO back to her. Another thing, Julie mentioned it, incumbent worker training has been a big initiative across the state. We're really trying to develop, and serve businesses in different ways more so than we have in the past. Incumbent worker training is serving those businesses and those employees to make that business more competitive, to make those employees more skilled, to, just really increase the capacity of those businesses across the state. We partnered with Jennifer Meek-Ills and the Ohio Workforce Association to present kind of a 2-day incumbent worker training on June 8th and June 9th. And it really had two components. It had a policy component. Paige Perigo, who's on this call, which you mentioned, her and Bree Hanberg gave kind of a policy overview of what you can do and can't do within incumbent worker training, talked about some of the flexibilities that come with incumbent worker training. And then we had a panel of 2 workforce development directors who had very different, well, I don't say very different, but different implementations of incumbent worker training. And they kind of talked about some of their forms and their processes. And I thought it was a great dynamic, because you have the policy aspect and the flexibilities. Then you had 2 different implementations of incumbent worker training within 2 different local areas. So I thought that was pretty exciting. Training the first day we did for workforce development board directors to talk more about the design of the programs. And the second day we presented to the business service teams, and talked about marketing and things like that, trying to market the incumbent worker training program. So, Ohio does not have a extensive history of incumbent worker training, but we have seen an increase in demand, from the tech cred program that's out there. We've seen a lot of demand in that program. I think it grows every time, and they break new records and new funding records every time they put a funding round out there. So, but we all know tech cred can really only serve those programs that are tech focused. With incumbent worker training, we can serve any industry. And there's a lot of flexibility there. So, in the past, we have worked with, maybe some of those programs who were not approved for tech cred, getting them, connected to our local workforce development areas so that they can maybe set up some incumbent worker training for them, and still, they can still find some training to upskill their staff. Because I think that's big right now. A lot of companies want to upskill their staff. They want to retain their staff. So I think incumbent worker training is going to be big going forward. As Julie mentioned, and WIOA reauthorization, it's another focus. There's the potential to dedicate more money to it than the current 20% that's allowed. So we're excited for that going forward and hope to see some more activity across the state. Aries has been another hot topic. We did deploy the Aries new case management system back on April 25th. We've had some rough patches, but we continue to work through it. The Aries team has done a great job of, kind of managing all that. It's a big change for our local workforce areas. It's a new system. We had OWCMS for way longer than I've been with the state. It predates me by far. So, it's a huge change, and there's still some gaps. We are looking to do an Aries regional training starting at the late July. We'll be holding trainings in 4 different regions. It'll be Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and potentially like a Belmont County, Cambridge area. It'll be an in-person question. In-person training. We'll be doing these sessions every quarter. Just going around, it won't be program specific. It'll be more basic type of training starting out, how to navigate, what screens are used for, things like that. And then it may morph into more, specific things that are needed after that throughout the rest of the quarters. So we are looking to roll out that in-person training. The in-person training is something that has been asked for. We've done a lot of virtual training, a lot of virtual sessions, but in-person training is something that I feel there's a need for. So we're going to accommodate that.
So Jay, I'm wondering if I could jump in with a question. I guess 2 questions. We have, there's so much going on, right? I can't imagine every time you hear what you are responsible for, what you all are working on. It just it's a lot. So the questions that are in the chat are really about the folks who are either on assistance, and I would add folks who've been unsuccessful or who are impacted by COVID, like kind of the folks who really need us most from a workforce perspective. do we have strategies that are really digging deep to get to them? I mean, I know there's always this balance between an individual's level of readiness and what the employer wants, but what are we doing really to bridge that for folks who need that support? And I guess parallel with that is the notion of being able to kind of leverage what else is out there, look at innovations in the field, think about new strategies. And, I'd love to hear anything about innovation and, what you're seeing as far as how we're getting people into jobs at this point.
Yeah, so one thing I did want to mention, and Julie kind of alluded to it a couple times, we've been in, trying to work closely with the Office of Family Assistance. There's a huge push right now from the SNAP E&T side to workforce, or to work more with workforce, with WIOA, to collaborate, to build that connection. In Ohio, obviously, it's a county-based SNAP system. So a lot of the newer guidance around SNAP E&T, what we're seeing, some of the services that they're providing are starting to overlap with WIOA. There's a lot of parallels there. So it only makes sense that we collaborate better, so that we are making sure that we are, utilizing those funds, utilizing WIOA, SNAP E&T to make sure that we are serving that population, making sure that we're getting them into the workforce system, that we're not siloing anything, because, SNAP E&T is a pretty small pot of money. It does not compare to WIOA. There is, some opportunities for growth there, with the 50-50 funds and all that. But compared to WIOA, it is a very small pot of money, and there's a lot of people to serve with that small pot of money. So we really want to start bridging that population into WIOA Title I, to make sure that we are collaborating. We've actually been working with the Seattle Jobs Initiative. They've been providing free technical assistance from FNS has tasked them to basically provide free technical assistance to states, to workforce boards, to counties who wanted that partnership, and that they're offering various levels of partnership, from, just the basic referral system to make sure that, those SNAP E&T participants are getting referred to WIOA, to make sure that they're getting enrolled into WIOA. That way you have both menu of services and fundings at the disposal for that participant, to kind of make that case management process a little more seamless. Co-enrollment is another thing, not just a referral and making sure they get there, but co-enrolling them in both programs and having some coordination to that. Not just, this hand not knowing what this hand's doing and potentially stepping all over each other's toes, but to coordinate that co-enrollment a little better. And then we even get into some more, deeper things where our workforce boards actually, could serve as an intermediary and, contract out to provide some of those, some of those SNAP E&T benefits under their umbrella, or even the boards providing those services that, themselves. So we're really exploring that dynamic to try to make sure that population is not being siloed into just SNAP E&T, that we are bringing them over to the workforce side, because at the end of the day, the pot of money, the expertise of the WIOA workforce side it's something that we've been doing for a long time. So SNAP E&T, it's extremely important that we are bridging that gap and making sure that where those participants have access, and it's seamless. It's not something that they should, have to jump through a lot of hoops through, and it shouldn't be hard for them. They really shouldn't even notice. They should just come into a center and, everything just starts working behind the scenes. So we're really trying to push that initiative right now. Obviously, there's no requirements out there for any of our counties or workforce boards to do this, but we want to provide that technical assistance to make it as easy as possible for those that want that.
Absolutely.
So we actually have June 30th, Seattle Jobs Initiative is going to provide a training session, a presentation session on some of those levels of collaboration that they've seen, they've provided. They're going to bring in examples from like Nebraska and Michigan who have done this at varying levels.
Right.
So from there, we've done a couple things. I did a small presentation at the Workforce Forum, the Board Workforce Forum, back in April. We had the Office of Family Assistance come in and present to our workforce board directors at the last board meeting on SNAP E&T. Now we're moving the step further, having Seattle Jobs Initiative present kind of these levels of collaboration. And then from there, we're hoping that's a catalyst just to kind of see that some of our counties and workforce boards want to start working together to maybe deepen that collaboration.
Great. Great. Yeah, I think that it's all exciting. One of the things that strikes me is that workforce, over at least as long as I've been involved in it, has continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's so many people. I mean, even on this call, we have representatives from a multitude of organizations. And so how do we get some of the information you're sharing, maybe not the exact training, but how do we have a more inclusive approach so that and I'm saying more inclusive implies that you're not being inclusive. I don't mean it like that at all. It's just, how do we get a wider audience familiar with some of what you're talking about so that we all can make connections and best get services out there? And I think that's, to Mary Ellen's point in the chat, this notion of some of the cash assistance adults, just folks who are continuing to be in need of services. It would be great to do some brainstorming around that. And Mary Ellen, maybe it would be good I think for all of us to also learn more about what legal aid's hearing and what sorts of barriers are presenting. So I guess, Jay, that's more of just a broad brush, like we're all in this together.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times things, you guys are WIOA, Wagner Pizer, have the specific systems, but there's a lot of philanthropically funded or other government sources. How do we all collectively advance our understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's what's exciting about this is there is a lot of opportunities to bring, other programs in this case. And, we're so early in these conversations. So we started this work group to kind of just brainstorm this a couple months ago. We're now moving into kind of that knowledge phase, just making sure that our boards and our counties kind of understand, what each other does, the WIOA program, SNAP ENT. And then I think that, going from here, like I said, we want this to be the catalyst to kind of for it to grow. And I think we can start bringing in other entities to that conversation and just brainstorm, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of brainstorming and a lot of working together to make this happen. It's not easy to combine. It sounds on paper, sounds easy as can be, but it's
no.
We've
Nothing, it doesn't sound easy.
We've learned that with CCMEP that it takes, years. It takes a lot of, people coming to the table and just saying, hey, well, have you thought of this? So I think that's probably that next step in the planning process.
Well, I missed a question, actually. I apologize. I think this is an important one, talking about shortage of home health care providers. Certainly, we know about daycare and childcare shortages. There's also acute shortages in behavioral health, as far as counselors and so on. And yet some of those jobs may not show up on the right list because the wages and other requirements. And I think you could say the same thing around hospitality jobs where there's a huge demand. So what are we doing to target those types of jobs where maybe there's a lot of demand, not the best wages, or not the clearest pathways? There's huge wait lists, from my understanding, for home health.
Yeah. And that is, across all those occupations you mentioned and many more, these are positions that are high stress, low paying. Burnout rate is, through the roof, and you're just not getting paid enough to hold these positions down. So, and Julie you can jump in anywhere if you want here, Julie, but we've had a lot of conversations around this, a lot of work groups going on around some of these recruiting tactics, to try to get these shortages, try to get the demand. How can we be innovative around it? Whether it's, exploring the use of, incentives if possible, exploring the use of work experiences, apprenticeships, just trying to come up with ways to fill these positions and to make sure that once they are filled, to equip them with the training and the knowledge they need to, to stay in that position. I think we just had a good conversation last week. There's some training out there that is around just coping with the everyday stress of the job and staying in it. I think you see two things. You see someone who gets in that type of position and they burn out quickly and they leave, or someone who stays in it forever. There's really not in between anymore. So, it's kind of a culmination of things. It's not just getting people in the door, it's keeping them, because it is a high burnout rate. So, you have to look at it holistically, not just getting them in there, but can we provide them the resources and tools to stay in that job and to make sure that they can, cope with the everyday stress, So yeah, there's a lot of conversations going on. Julie, if you want to add anything to that, I know we've been approached by multiple groups just trying to brainstorm that same topic.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add than what Jay has already said, but just this is a lot of these industries and occupations are very much on our radar as needing to be filled, but you know, and that, you know, how do you get individuals interested in doing these occupations? And so a lot of times we are talking about, well, can this be apprenticeship where you kind of ease yourself into it? How is this part of a career pathway? So that so that everybody can understand that, you know, you may start here, but you can end up here. How do we keep, and then how do you keep that workforce coming in? And those are the big topics right now. I think it has hit a lot of industries. I mean, as you said, home health, any type of direct care, children's service agencies. I mean, it's just, you know, we're dealing with a lot, and a lot of it, you know, all of those different industries are for different reasons. Some is just retirement. Some of it is burnout. Some of it is low pay. Some of it's a combination of all of those. And so, you know, we're having, just as Jay said, a lot of conversations being pulled in a lot of different ways. I know, you know, some of the Jennifer's been part of some of these conversations too. So,
right. Well, we are over on time. We hope that, you know, as always, that this is a continuing dialogue. As I mentioned, you know, I've had conversations with Julie and Jay more regularly. And I think there's so much interest and lots of different priorities to work through and lots of different challenges. And, you know, I hope we can continue to talk through some of these questions. You know, we didn't even touch on the great resignation or the benefit cliffs, or, you know, just the myriad of other sorts of topics. So we hope to have you back and continue talking. And if you are, hopefully we got to all the questions in the chat. If you have a question or want to follow up, please feel free to reach out. Carter just dropped a survey in the chat as well. Thank you for joining. The recording will be online, and we hope to see you next month.